I am Groot. 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 Hey, what's going on, everybody? For those wondering what I was saying, well, I mean, you should just understand Groot language, no? But in case you don't, let's run it back and do it in English. What's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to a very special edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. That's right, folks. We are chilling once again back in the comic book corner as we continue on the Seaman's Infinity War countdown. Slight apology, but this one was planned this way. I did not post a video yesterday as I have now reached a section where it was the only movie that gets moved around would be the second of the two movies I should be talking about. So we should be covering numbers 10 and 11 today, which would have been 9 days out and 8 days out. So you know the drill. Pull up a chair, take a seat. If you haven't been able to figure it out between, this little catchphrase we have, or my hat, or, just who's on my shirt, I am, of course, talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, Volumes 1 and 2. I wanted to do both videos on the same day, as watching these movies back-to-back was awesome. As I said, this is the only set of movies that involves movement, right? Guardians was, as we knew, we moved a bunch of stuff around in Phase 1. Phase 2 so far has played out completely in release date order, including the movie that we're going to talk about right now, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. But we did have to move Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 up from its location in the release date order, as it takes place right after 1. That being the case, I wanted to do both videos on the same day, because it's really the best way to watch these. Watching them back-to-back was so awesome. So, you know my drill, right? I like to talk about the bad, end with the good, so let's jump right into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. When it comes to bad, there's really only one thing bad in this movie, and it's not entirely bad. We're going to talk about this person again a little bit later when we are talking about good stuff, because they did do some things with him that I really enjoyed. But on the overall, Ronan the Accuser is just not that great of a villain. He's, again, one of the stereotypical ones we talk about, falling into that trope of just being very generic bad guy who wants to take over the world. He does, like I said, he does execute some things that we'll talk about in a little bit, but yeah, just not the best. He's almost there. He looks really cool. That's one of the things I really like. The look of Ronan is really, really well executed. In the general way that the role is delivered by Lee Pace is delivered fairly well. It's just because of what we get, his story is not the main focus, so it's fairly generic. We do know that we're going to see Ronan as well as Daimon Hansu's character, Korath, in the upcoming Ms. Marvel film, which will follow Avengers Infinity War. And when we go back to that time period, because we're going back to the 80s for that movie, I really hope that we can kind of dig more into Ronan and into Daimon Hansu, who plays Korath. He shows up at the very beginning of the movie and then gets sprinkled around throughout before finally getting the... and you will know why this is funny in a little bit. But yeah, those two characters, and obviously just the actor, Daimon Hansu, so talented, kind of felt like he was wasted a little bit. So I do get to hope we can kind of dig into those characters a little bit in Ms. Marvel when that arrives, because I think there's stuff to be had with both. Just this movie was about one thing and one thing only, and it's the Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's jump right into the good as we started to talk about some good things. We start right at the top with James Gunn. This is now, for me, the third director of Phase 2 that has really stepped out and shined a lot. And of course, it follows the best movie that we've seen so far in Phase 2, which is where the other two directors are coming from. We got the Russo brothers, who had a knockout with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, And then James Gunn takes a group of misfits that most people are unfamiliar with and turns them into a household name, a mega power group of stars in this Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Guardians of the Galaxy. What James Gunn does with this group of characters is phenomenal. Like I said, it's this group of misfit superheroes that a lot of people were very unfamiliar with, and now they're a household name. And that all starts with James Gunn. Directed and one of the lead writers on the movie. Just his concept was just so good. And the idea to lean into the humor that you can get out of the Guardians made this movie absolutely phenomenal. You laugh your butt off in this movie nonstop, just because of all sorts of things. I mean, the fact that Drax takes everything literally, so when someone goes, well, that went over his head, he's like, that would never go over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it. Like, that stuff is just natural, not forced. It's just the way the character is, and because the character is developed and executed so well, I mean, good Lord. Dave Bautista is just unreal with what he gives. We'll talk about him in a couple minutes too, but just something that was not expecting. And like I said, a lot of this all has to do with James Gunn, the way he approached and handles, just kind of knew these characters, and he opted to take a route we were not unfamiliar with, right? I've mentioned as we've gone through all the movies that humor has played a huge role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Only this one is really the first one that's considered a full-on comedy. And it's just executed so well. It's the perfect mix, but it's the perfect mixture, right? It's not like just all comedy. When we talk about Ragnarok, we'll talk about one of the things with that movie is that the comedy is so often, and it works so good, it kind of detracts from some of the emotional hits in the movie. Not the case with either of the Guardians films. The one thing James Gunn does really well is mixing his action-packed film. Both of these movies are action-packed. But delivers something that is so action-packed, so funny, but also so emotionally relevant. The character development in this movie, and just everything that we get out of this movie delivers things in a way where you're just like, oh man, I'm all in with this group. I want to go on all the rides and have all the fun with them. And if you let yourself go to the emotional hits, these movies are even more rewarding. So everything that, he did, and the biggest and best part possibly of the entire film, and it makes it its most distinct part, right, is that the soundtrack is the baseline for the music, the score and the music we hear. We get, obviously, some legit, real good score, music as we hit different scenes, but using the music that James Gunn uses, oh my gosh, it's just non-stop the whole film, and it's very rare you get a movie where you're just like, oh man, I need to go get that soundtrack. It's been a while, I don't buy too many soundtracks anymore, but the Guardians ones is just jam-packed with all this wonderful 80s nostalgia music, and it sets a tone right away with the very opening of the movie and the title credit open. And it's just brilliant. It's one of those things that was James Gunn driven. When writing the movie, this was very, very important for him, and it works so well, man. It just sets this perfect kind of baseline to take us on this journey. Like I said, it's this mixture of humor and just emotional connection to the characters. I love that we get to start with Peter Quill and his mom dying at the very beginning of the movie, and seeing Yondu abduct him, or what we think is an abduction. We learn later on what actually happened via Volume 2, which we'll talk about a little bit later in a separate video. But yeah, I love starting there because you're immediately connecting with the fact that our main character has got a lot of emotional issues that he's got to be dealing with, right? The last time he was on Earth, referred to in the movie as Terra, I mean, his mom's dying of cancer and watches her die, and then like gets taken out of the room. He goes running, and then massive spaceship, off we go. But it establishes very, very key elements to Peter Quill's character, and they're elements that are very necessary that then Chris Pratt and co. take to the next space, and it fits with what we learn right away. So again, between the soundtrack and starting there, we get a very good idea of the kind of movie that we're about to embark on. It's also visually stunning. The thing I love most, one of the things I love most is the cast. But after that, the visuals in this movie are beautiful. It's a non-stop, just like, just wonderful in that way, right? I mean, the special effects, both CGI and practical, work so well in this movie. The color palette is amazing. There's this very, maybe not so shocking. This group is the group that really directly has a connection to Thanos already, which leading to the Infinity War. There's a very big rainbow palette kind of to a lot of things we've seen with the Infinity War trailer. Again, I've only watched the teaser, but even that, just images and things, the rainbow colors because of all the Infinity Stones is kind of there, and it's because, it's in space. Maybe James Gunn was thinking that way because the rainbow colors of this movie pop so well and just establishes a very, very unique, bright, film. The look is just very bright, and it's just the tone and the palette of the movie is very different than other movies that we've seen, and the colors just pop and make everything else pop. I mean, like, there are scenes toward the end of this movie that are just absolutely visually beautiful and stunning. Specifically when Groot starts using the little light up kind of, I mean, I'm assuming they're part of the plant. They emanate from him, so they're not fireflies, but they kind of look like fireflies. And just the way it's shot, and you're just like, oh, man. Or the opening sequence in Xandar, when the majority of our group all get to meet each other. Just, boom, so much brighter than anything we've seen. And I loved it. It pulls you in, and you're immediately drawn to it because of that. And at the end of the day, you can say whatever you want about this movie. Oh, yeah, it's so funny. Oh, the action's awesome. It is a really, really well-written movie. Like I said, this mixture of humor and action and emotional punches tied into the story, it's just crafted and written and explained so well. Like I said, the really kind of only downer in the movie is Ronan's character isn't really fleshed out that much, and we don't get to utilize Diamond Hansu as much as you should in someone with that acting ability. So obviously when we saw that we didn't get a lot of him in this movie, figured he'd probably be back at some point, and we know that he's going to. So hopefully he'll get to kind of have some more fun, because his character's real cool too. I kind of like what they did with him. But yeah, it's just this mixture of bringing in all these people in and out. And again, a major new director who is handling a group of heroes at one time, right? Like, James Gunn is basically starting with an Avengers-styled movie with 5 main characters that have come together to form a group. And he just uses them all so well. They all get to shine, they all get their moments, and each character is written really, really strongly. Besides James Gunn, who just pulled off something nobody was expecting with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, set a bar that was going to be impossible to exceed with Volume 2, but when we get there, you'll see. Gunn lives and just owns this world in a way where it's going to be very hard for him to make a poor film with this group, because he's just got such a grasp of the characters and how they interact. And I mean, like I said, it was so impressive. As a comic book fan, I was pumped for Guardians, because I was like, oh man, that's a group I never thought growing up that I would see on the big screen. But then to see it publicly just get so well received, ton of credit to James Gunn. As I said, one of the best things that he does in the movie is the action sequences. and they're great. Coming off of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, again, really, really, really strong story, and some of the best action that we've seen with Cap in the entire universe and in general. Just some of the best action sequences that we've seen. So there was a bar that had been raised for James Gunn, and he approaches it in a different way. Not a ton of hand-to-hand combat, but it's a lot of space action, and it's so good. Anytime action's going on in this movie, you're basically just hopping on for a really fun ride. For instance, I love the opening sequence once we get there. We get to meet Peter Quill, the adult, as he is on a raiding mission, listening to Come and Get Your Love on his headphones, the movie opens with the death of his mother, but the first thing we hear is the soundtrack starting to play right from the very beginning because he's got his headphones on, listening to Awesome Mix Volume 1 from his mom. So the opening sequence, I just love watching Peter sing and dance. You totally are grasping this character's personality immediately. It's fun, it's funny. It's not a super long sequence, as I said, little bit of Diamond Hansu sprinkled in, but as he's going through the opening title sequence, which leads to a great shot of him kind of dancing, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 pops up, and he's singing along to the song. He's grabbing these little creatures, whose names I can't think of right now, but we'll remember them come Volume 2 because we'll be talking about them in the opening once again. Something that, again, James Gunn, very good, connecting the dots between one movie and the next. But yeah, I just love he's using them as a microphone, and he's just having a ton of fun as he's going to try to steal this orb. Once he gets it, cool technology use. He has this like gravity platelet that he puts down that pulls it through the chamber that it's in. Really just neat conceptual technology to use. But once he has it, boom, Diamond Hansu shows up, and like I said, it's a very quick action sequence. But it's super. We get to see how creative right away it's gonna be. He gets in trouble on his back, blows a hole behind him, uses his little like foot blasters that kind of propel him through space as he needs to shoot out the back and then start running. And you just kind of get the concept of like, okay, like this is gonna be a fun action movie. It just sets the tone very, very well. And then I love that he brings the gravity tool that he uses to get the orb that's holding the purple Infinity Stone in it. I love that he uses that as he's trying to get out. He runs into about 5 dudes, throws it on the ground. It pulls them all into a section that he then propels and jumps off of them to get to the spaceship. So again, just a really fun, quick action sequence, but just sets the tone for for the movie, because right away you're laughing and having a lot of fun in the first 10 minutes. The opening sequence, as I mentioned before, in Xandar, also awesome, right? It's gorgeous to look at. Xandar is clean, crisp, beautiful, and it is just so bright that all the different colors, just from the Guardians themselves to the world around them, pops. And what I love about the Xandar sequence is, we've already established who Peter Quill is real quick, and just as quick we are establishing Rocket, Groot, and, of course, Zoe Saldana's Gamora. We get to run into all of them right away, and it's a super fun sequence, because here's Peter Quill. He's kind of screwing over Michael Rooker's Yondu and the other Ravagers by going to the place where they were going, the pawn shop that they were going to sell this thing for a lot. And, once the guy realizes that Ronan was sending people after, he's like, I don't want nothing to do with that guy. Shoves him out, boom, there's Gamora just kind of chilling, looking so cool. And obviously we full on met her. The scene just before, where like we were kind of getting to meet Ronan, and we meet Thanos the Mad Titan as Ronan is talking to him and his daughters Gamora and Nebula. So now we know that Gamora has been tasked with going to retrieve the sphere orb, and she doesn't know what it is, but she's just there to get it. Or no, that's not true. She does know what it is. She wants to backstab Ronan, as we find out. But she's just chilling, looking super cool. As soon as Peter comes out and kind of starts to flirt with her, she takes advantage, gets a hold of the orb. Meanwhile, we run into Rocket and Groot. Vin Diesel playing Groot. Just I am Groot right away. And, they're looking for a bounty. They scan, boom, they find Peter. Now Peter is there. Okay, we're going after him. And then Gamora it's just this fun action sequence between all of them as they're trying to chase different things, right? Groot and Rocket are trying to get Peter because the bounty on him is really high. Gamora is trying to acquire the sphere from him. There's a back and forth. And then they realize, even Groot and Rocket are like, maybe there's something to that thing too. And eventually, the Nova Corps show up, arrest everybody because of just the public disturbances. But it's just a fun sequence and super inventive, right? The way Groot functions, boom, he can bop out his arm and it's a shield. The way they just discard Gamora, the weapons that they're using. Rocket's just got all these cool gadgets and stuff. And you get to see all that play out in this kind of fast-paced little quick action sequence that then rolls into just all this comedy and humor with this group as they get sent to prison. I love the way Peter interacts with John C. Reilly's Corpseman Day, rolling up the middle finger. Like, I didn't know that how this thing worked and now it won't go away. And the prison sequence, again, is just an action sequence that's brilliant. It's the concept of as they're kind of coming through. And that's the thing with all the action sequences in this movie, it's not just the action. There's all this, like when you're talking Cap or Iron Man, it's like, the action is this, this, and this. All of the action is tied into dialogue and the humor that's being built throughout the movie. So, like, the action sequence in the prison is a lot of fun, but the entire prison scene is a ton of fun. You get to see all four of our main characters that we've met to this point kind of get cleaned off, go through the entering jail process. I love seeing the one guard listening to Peter's music and Peter freaking out about it. You immediately can establish how important the music is to him because music was so important to his mom. And that's really all that he has left from Earth because he's never gone back since leaving. I love that when they finally do get into the actual prison, they make sure to establish that, hey, like, don't mess with us. I mean, Groot takes this tough guy and, his two fingers go up through the guy's nose. And the guy, of course, is Nathan Fillion, we find out. Nice little kind of Easter egg drop for someone who's always been big to the science fiction world. But again, it's just the creative movement of these people. Meeting Drax is awesome. Everyone tries to pin and corner Gamora because she works for Thanos and Ronan, two people nobody likes because they are just horrible people. And, you just immediately feel Drax's presence. Like every other character, as soon as we meet them, boom, you have an idea of who he is. There's a guy who lost his wife and daughter to Ronan through Thanos, or to Thanos through Ronan. So he has this hatred for both, and knows if he can get Gamora, he can probably draw them out. And that's, before killing her, that's what Peter does. Peter is a ladies' man, and you can tell he's visibly attracted to Gamora right away. So he's trying to save her, and kind of convinces Drax, like, if you come and you hang with, we can help us get out of here. We can use her to lure people out. That gets Drax on their side, and again, someone who's just big, physical, violent. Dave Bautista, just presence right away. So I love how that's dealt with, and now, okay, everybody in this group is pretty rock solid, and then you get to kind of see how Rocket does everything. He gets, talking about, like, this is what we need, and the first thing is this battery. So Groot, being very simple-minded, goes straight for the battery, which, of course, Rocket's like, but the last thing that we get is the battery, because it'll set off an alarm. Alarm goes off, things are going crazy, and now you're getting everybody moving. And within Rocket's plan, he mentions, like, I need that guy's leg, not because he really needs it, because he thinks it's funny. So when Peter shows up with the leg, and we find out that he had to transfer the guy like 30,000 units, Rocket just starts laughing. He's like, I just thought it would be funny to take the guy's leg. And then as they kind of move and get in, they use the gravity field to throw everybody off. They take the kind of center console and attach these firing guns to it so that they can get up and move themselves out. And it's just creative, inventive, and fun. Same with the Battle on Nowhere. Very, very not super intricate in the action, but just this ton of fun. We start at a bar where we're kind of now really getting to see and feel everybody. We get to meet the Collector in this sequence. And we finally get to know exactly what Infinity Stones are. As we, have known at this point, we learn that they're called Infinity Stones via Thor 2. Getting Benicio del Toro's The Collector to explain to the Guardians what these stones are is awesome. And once the Guardians realize what the stones are, they're trying to gain it back and go take it somewhere that's not going to lead to trouble. Whereas Rocket and Groot, Rocket's like, where's our money? And then because of all that, while they're doing things, Drac is wasted, so he puts out a call to Ronan and is like, come get your orb here. Ronan shows up, and, you get to see how powerful he is. I mean, he just manhandles Drax. And in the meantime, while that's going on, you have Gamora being chased by Nebula, and you get this cool little space chase action sequence, and that stuff's great. And then when, I love the way that, there are these kind of mining spaceships that are, Quill says they're indestructible. And he's like, yeah, but we don't have any blasters. It's like, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, you can drive them through these, Kree ships. And it's just this cool scene where he takes it, rips off the top, throws out the guy inside of the spaceship, and then takes over driving the Kree spaceship with this little mining kind of spaceship. And it's this cool, space chase sequence that leads to Gamora's ship exploding, and I love that Peter sacrifices himself. He goes, no, I'm not going to let her die because of getting involved in my stuff. Goes out there, she's floating in space, puts his space mask on her, calls out to Yondu, hey, these are my locations, I know you've seen me here already, come get me. Knowing that Yondu getting him would save both of them. And it's just, again, within these action sequences, you're defining who your characters are, what type of character they have, and that's what you get with Peter there. And then, very much so, like, Captain America, we're building on the fact that we are doing these huge, massive sequences towards the ends of this movie. The finale in this one is roughly 27, 28 minutes again, and it's non-stop. You get the Nova Corps shows up to try to stop Ronan. They connect all their starships to create, this net to slow it down. So cool. Heartbreaking visually. Or it's heartbreaking in general. Visually, it is stunning on screen as Ronan's ship kind of moves through and causes chain reaction explosions. I love how everybody in this sequence works together. We're just at a place where they're working with the Nova Corps. The Nova Corps is like, you guys gave us a call, said this was on the way. Prove us wrong that you guys, can be heroes. The way that they separate, they kind of have Rocket rolling with Yondu, which is the beginning, especially when you watch this back-to-back with Volume 2, kind of the beginning seeds being sown for some cool character development there in the next movie. But again, you get this kind of cool, just visual space sequence as ships are flying all over the place. Peter, Gamora, Drax, and Groot kind of going into the ship. Is just a cool action sequence. Once they're in and they kind of start taking people out, right? Peter kind of takes out a bunch of people, and then all these Kree come running, and Groot just takes his arms and puts them right through, all of the guys that are in this line, and then just kind of smashes them like this back and forth, and that's really cool and inventive. I love that as the main group of the Guardians are on Ronan's ship doing what they've got to do, Rocket is doing things, trying to help everybody. Yondu is, and his ship kind of crashes, and then we get this sick sequence for him where Yondu, with his fin, can whistle, and his arrow can take out everybody, and you get to see it do that on the ground, and then everyone just kind of falls, and you're just like, oh, man, again, something super inventive and creative visually. That's not hand-to-hand combat, but so cool. You get Gamora and Nebula facing off and getting to see some really good action with the two of them. and their relationship. While they're fighting, you're kind of getting how and why they dislike each other for these different reasons of Thanos forcing them to always fight each other. You get then, obviously because Ronan, they shoot him with this giant gun, nothing happens. Who comes in to save the day? But Rocket crashes in through the front of the ship, kind of hits Ronan, and now everybody's on the ship. But because of that, ship's blowing up, ship's crashing. And then you get the most beautiful, heartbreaking scene as Groot uses all of his plant-like ability to create a cocoon for the Guardians. And when Rocket kind of wakes up from being knocked around by Ronan, he's like, Groot, what do you... No, like, you'll die. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, like, this simple character, who can only say 3 words, I am Groot, in that order specifically, is now making this massive sacrifice to save this group of people who... Yeah, Rocket's his boy, he's always with Rocket, but this other group, they've already kind of formed this family. All these misfits are kind of loners out there. And then Groot says the most powerful line of the movie, "We are Groot." And it's beautiful. And unfortunately, as they crash, it leads to what we believe is Groot's death. But fortunately, he's a plant. We plant him, he will grow. But you're in the middle of this emotional turmoil where like you're hitting all these notes of like Rocket is so hurt and stuff, but then boom, Ronan is still this threat, and I love that when he comes off the ship, he declares them the Guardians of the Galaxy, which then Peter takes and owns with the group, and it looks like it's all gonna be over, and there's Peter doing this dance-off thing, and Ronan's like, what are you doing? He's like, dance off, bro! And like, it's just super funny, it's making you laugh, but it's a great distraction so that Drax can shoot the thing again, but this time shoot it at the Infinity Stone. It bursts the hammer that Ronan's got. Quill dives, grabs the Infinity Stone, and then we get to find out there's more to Quill and this group than meets the eye, as they all kind of join up to harness the energy, take out Ronan, saving the day, saving the galaxy. And like I said, it's not just the action in this movie and the humor, it's the writing. There's no wasted moments. Everything that happens serves some kind of a purpose. The scenes with the Ravagers are great. And you're just kind of learning about that group. When they become a full-on team when they need to. Peter has this wonderful speech, and everybody, kind of starts standing up. I'll go into battle with you, Peter. And Rocket's like, all right, I'm standing. Are you happy? We're a bunch of jackasses all standing in a circle. What's the plan? The emotional beats for Rocket in this movie are heartbreaking. They refer to him as a raccoon and vermin, and because he looks like a raccoon, but we find out he's actually a man-made creature, and you just see how much that bothers him, that he's not any one thing, that he was this created thing, and he hates that. And then losing Groot, just how it hits him. I mean, there's a scene where he's just sitting there, and I love it, man, because he hates the concept of being thought of as a pet or this creature, and there's Drax. He just kind of pets him. And it's this super nice moment, and again, it's just this really, really awesome storytelling and writing. And then, like I said, the thing that works the best in this movie is the cast. Star-Lord / Peter Quill, played by Chris Pratt. Who knew the fat, funny guy from Parks and Rec could be this ripped, huge action star? And now, not only did he own it here, he's got all these other action movies that he can do, and he's become a full-on leading man. It's wonderful, and it's because of how great he plays Peter. He just is Peter Quill. Most of the actors just become who their characters are in this universe. Everything about Peter, as we talked about, with his mom, and the headphones, and the music, and the action, just everything about Peter is so cool. I love the way his mask comes on and off. It's something off the comic book pages that just works so well visually. I love how he utilizes his thrusters and his stuff. Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana, wonderful. She's just badass, really cool, very powerful, very strong. And like I said, she, too, has that emotional story with her sister that, they kind of start to break into with Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, who's also awesome, looks amazing, doesn't even look anything like Karen Gillan. Her approach, the way, like, she's made robotically, so when she gets hit and blasted into things, like, her whole body's all shifted, and the way it kind of fixes itself is so cool. But that relationship with her and Gamora is awesome, and kind of really establishes things that Zoe her Gamora is going through that then gets fleshed out even more come volume 2. Drax, like I said, brilliant. I just love Dave Bautista in this movie. So out of left field, didn't expect anything from him. Because I'd seen him in other things, and he was never very good on the mic in wrestling. Yet give him this character who just takes everything literally, and everything he says is just funny. And again, it's so well executed in this movie, but it's only establishing how much better Drax can be as we move forward. But like I said, things going over my head, no, they won't. I would catch them. He just takes everything literally, and it's great. I don't get metaphors. And at the end of the movie, he tries to do a metaphor that doesn't work, and it just makes you laugh. Rocket and Groot, they're easily, look at my shirt and my hat. My two favorite characters in this movie. I love the way that their dynamic is, how they play off of each other. Bradley Cooper, who plays Rocket's voice, never in a million years would you know it's Bradley Cooper. He's developed an accent for Rocket that's so distinctive and different from his voice that it is Rocket. It doesn't sound like Bradley Cooper. And then here's Vin Diesel, who only says 3 words, although make it 5 when you add we and are. But here's, it's like you get this big action blockbuster guy to just voice a character who only says, I am Groot. But at the end of the day, he has the most, like I said, the most powerful line in the whole movie, that we are Groot moment. It's just, and he's so cool, man. He's big, he's huge. And I love that, when he does die, they put him in a planter, and you start to see the beginnings of baby Groot. And the way that he loves to dance, and when he's dancing in the post-credit or the mid-credit and Drax looks over, he freezes. And as soon as Drax isn't looking, he goes back to dancing, and you're just like, oh man, I love that. And like I said, watching these 2 movies back-to-back, that's again something that's dropped, kind of fed in there, builds even better as we move forward. So yeah, you go get Vin Diesel, and Vin Diesel does very simple voice work, but it's so powerful and it works. The way his inflections every time he says I am Groot just work. Rocket might be my favorite character. I love that he's fast talking. He's a jerk who just kind of pushes everybody away, but really does really loves being part of this family group, because he's never had that besides Groot. And again, something that's written very well in this movie and then taken to the next place come volume 2. But I just love the way he acts, the way he can just take things, he just grabs, he starts breaking apart Quill's spaceship, and he's like, you can't just take my spaceship away. He's like, nah man, you don't need this stuff, and boom, he creates this massive gun. Just his character so well executed. Yondu and the Ravagers, Michael Rooker, you love him in this movie, and again, something that's just really well executed and makes you fall in love with him even more come volume 2. That's the great thing when we get to volume 2, is you're establishing your core. Those are the places that we really dive into. And then these fringe characters, and then new fringe characters come volume 2, they get their time to kind of shine and dive into their stories because we've established our group so well. But yeah, he just looks, the look to everybody in this movie is great. From Gamora to Drax, the makeup and just right off the comic book pages. Thing with Yondu's not a fin. It's just kind of like this mohawk looking thing that gets his stuff to operate. But again, because that's there, you'd almost want to say it's a knock, but then volume 2 happens, and we do get to see that iconic Finn. But just the way he's kind of like a grumpy old man, the way he doesn't act like a dad to Peter, but he is. They're just awesome. Pay attention in this movie to Yondu's trinkets, something that plays out big time come volume 2. Love the Nova Corps, Nova Prime, who's played by Glenn Close, and Roman Day, who's played by John C. Reilly. I just love them. Glenn Close looks great. She plays Nova Prime really well. Love John C. Reilly's relationship with Star-Lord. It's really funny. He creates a lot of funny moments, but some really, really touching ones in the fact that, he gives Peter back a ship that's fixed, because he saved his family. And just, all these little things that are just sewn in there are just wonderful. And then, of course, the Thanos setup. Finally getting to see him. And even then, he looks amazing. He looks even better going toward Infinity War. But establishing that Gamora and Nebula come from him, and tying him directly to the Guardians, makes it why the Guardians are so important to weave into this world. And James Gunn executes them wonderfully. And Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel, and Bradley Cooper are just all brilliant. I absolutely love this movie. It is was immediately one of my favorites because it's one of the most fun movies to date in the Marvel universe. And James Gunn has identified something very special, and Kevin Feige has done the right thing and said, okay, you pulled this off, you did great, you own these guys. Right? The way the Russo brothers have now owned Captain America and get to play with everybody, James Gunn has owned this group and created something that's very unique and special in the universe. That just shows this was the movie that proved Marvel can do anything they want and it will work. Love Guardians of the Galaxy. I've said all I gotta say. What do you guys have to say? Hit those comments below. Let me know what you thought of Guardians, how much you loved it. What about the characters are the best things for you? If there was more than just Ronan, I said Ronan's look and stuff was awesome, but character weak. Anything else in the movie that maybe I missed? Let me know. Hit the comments. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you get an alert every time I make a new video, including the next installment of the Seaman's Infinity War Countdown. For the Seaman Cinema Sit-Down, I am the Seaman. I am signing off. Peace! I am Groot.